Shirley Ruth Fleming was born in 1931, the same year her parents George and Jeanette moved from Arkansas to San Luis Obispo, California. Ruth was carried in the arms of her mother to worship services at the Little Mission, the 1617 Oso Street storefront beginning of a congregation that would later be called Grace Tabernacle and then Grace Church. I have often said that the opportunity of having grown up in our church is perhaps the most influential thing in my life. In March of 1936, the congregation had outgrown the storefront building and moved their meetings to the Monday Club. In 1937, the church changed its name to Grace Tabernacle. It was during the Monday Club years that God reached Ruth's heart. In her own words, she recounts that experience. It was at the Monday Club one Friday night when Leroy was preaching that I was convicted of being a sinner for the first time. I was 9 years old. I prayed right there in my chair for the Lord to forgive me and invited Him into my heart. The September 30th, 1936 issue of the San Luis Telegram-Tribune reported that building permits had been given for building a new church. It went on to report that on Osos and Pismo Streets, the undenominational congregation is erecting an attractive church edifice with a carved roof over the auditorium, which will be a striking addition to the religious structures of the city. Ruth's childhood home was on the present-day location of our ministry center, so the construction site was her playground, Ruth recalls in her own words. Of course, since we lived next door, we were always in the way. Ralph Vanderberg told me that wherever he wanted to put a board, there I was in the way. His mother, Ada Vanderberg, was one of my Sunday school teachers. One year, she had an Easter egg hunt in the empty formed auditorium. We really enjoyed that. The first services in the new building were held on Easter Sunday, April 5th, 1942. At this first service, Ruth, at age 10, was baptized by her uncle Abby Johnson and Pastor Leroy Person. It was in this 10th year of Ruth's life that she felt the Lord's call to missions. Pastor Leroy, who had a passion for missions, often brought in missionary speakers to expose the congregation to God's work around the world. One such speaker was Arthur Mao, a missionary from Borneo. After hearing him speak, Ruth asked her uncle how long it would take to become a missionary. Her uncle, not realizing her seriousness, answered, "A long time, my dear." In the 1930s and 40s, Pastor Leroy and Harry Powelson, having a passion to reach inmates with Christ's love, regularly visited the local prison and would take the youth of the congregation with them, learning firsthand how to love the least of these. Ruth's call to missions grew as she grew, and in her high school years, she envisioned going to Asia, specifically Singapore, as a medical missionary. But in the summer of Ruth's 15th year, Pastor Daniel Sanchez, who led a Mexican Baptist church in Santa Maria, needed a piano player for a wedding at the church. Ruth played for the wedding and evidently did a splendid job. After that, she would play regularly for that church's Sunday school classes. It was an experience that would change her entire ministry vision. Along with playing the piano for that Mexican Baptist church, Ruth also accompanied Pastor Sanchez and his family to play music for his Spanish meetings to the pea picker camps on Saturdays. To prepare, Ruth began memorizing Bible verses in Spanish, and that fall, she started taking Spanish at SLO High School. Ruth graduated from SLO High in 1949 and went to Biola College to major in Christian education. That next summer, Ruth worked for a Wycliffe director in Mexico City and taught classes every Sunday evening for the children of missionaries. When Ruth graduated from Biola in 1952, Singapore and all of Asia was completely closed to missionaries, so she applied to Latin American Mission to work in Mexico. But her application was not accepted because of her too young age of 21. However, she was accepted at the Child Evangelism Institute in Pacific Palisades, beginning in the fall of November 1952. Completing her training in 1953, the Child Evangelism Fellowship Board sent her to begin a CEF ministry in the California Imperial Valley. Their intention was to test her commitment to missions. Ruth wrote to Grace Tabernacle, and the elders agreed to support her in the amount of $150 per month. This made Ruth the second missionary supported by the church, but the very first homegrown missionary to have come from within the congregation. Ruth moved to Brawley, California, and helped begin the child evangelism ministry in the 5 cities of Holtville, Mexicali, Imperial Valley, Calexico, and Westlake. There in the Imperial Valley, the CEF teachers met the children at school and walked them to a nearby church where good news clubs were held. These clubs were very well attended. At times, 125 children would come. 1953 brought another calling from the Lord. Ruth left by train to begin her missionary work in Mexico City. Here she would study Mexican culture and language at the University of Mexico. She would also teach CEF classes to Mexican children. The classes were all in Spanish, making it a stressful time for Ruth. 2 years later, a pastor of a church in Mexico City found himself needing help with vacation Bible school classes at his church. The pastor made a request of the CEF director not to send any of the American people for the position. He said he needed a native Mexican Spanish speaker. To teach the pastor a lesson in humility, the director sent Ruth, the most American-looking person in the ministry. That pastor was Ricardo Salvador, and Ruth must have made quite an impression on him, as that spring he asked her to be his wife. They married in 1955. Together, Ruth and Ricardo worked under the governance of the Christian Missionary Alliance Board as church planters in Mexico City. In 1961, they moved to Pueblo, Mexico, to continue their church planting ministry and help establish the Central American Missionary Institute. The Lord blessed their ministry with growth and blessed their marriage with the addition of 4 children. 9 years later, they moved to El Paso, Texas, and started a small Spanish-speaking church in their home. The group soon outgrew the Salvador's home and moved to the fellowship hall of an established English-speaking church. In 1973, the Salvadors met an American missionary couple with a burden to start a ministry in Juarez, Mexico. They had funding available through their mission association, but they had no contacts. The Salvadors had contacts, but no funding. So they worked together to plant a church in Juarez. Renting an office building after hours in downtown Juarez, they offered free English classes from 7 to 8:15 at night, Monday through Thursday. They were free classes, but with the requirement to attend a 45-minute Bible study after the English class. From this study, a church was planted and grew. The Salvadors continue serving the Lord to this day with an evangelism and shepherding ministry to senior citizens in El Paso and Juarez. Not neglecting their own spiritual growth in their golden years, they regularly meet with an accountability group for Bible study and prayer. In the words of Ruth and Ricardo's daughter, Miriam Sue, "Their 60 years of missionary service has been extraordinary. When my mom left San Luis Obispo, she left with Child Evangelism Fellowship, working with children. As the years progressed, their mission work was church planting. They trained Mexican nationals to take over as pastors once the church was established. They helped establish a Christian radio station here in El Paso, and now they work with senior citizens. The spectrum of their work has truly gone full circle."